Alright, so numbers 22 to 25. They deal with this. Okay? And these are parallel. So they're going to have these arrows on them. Okay? Arrows not at the end, but they go through. Okay? The lines. And then they're going to have a transversal. In this case, there's two transversals. Okay? This is one, and this is another. Okay? And they're talking about angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, angle 4, and angle 5. Okay? And they want you to identify each. Okay? So 22, 23, 24, and 25. Okay? So 22 is angle 2 and 3. Okay? What are they? So we're talking about angle 2 and angle 3. What are these? Kalia, since you're talking, what are these? Angles 2 and 3.
I don't know.
Yes, you do. We talked about this.
Wait, say it again.
Okay? Numbers 2 and 3. Okay?
Okay.
One's on the inside. One's on the outside, and they're on the same side. You remember what that's called?
No.
One's on the ends. They're not adjacent, right? They're not touching. Right?
Inside to what?
Ah! So, here are the parallel lines, right? So this would be the interior of the parallel lines. What's the exterior of the parallel lines? Out here, right? So angle 2 is outside. It's in the exterior. Angle 1 is inside. There's only one thing that's both inside and outside and on the same line.
Interior or same side corresponding?
Good. We just call them corresponding. Okay? These are corresponding angles. Okay? Corresponding meaning same side, interior, exterior, not adjacent angles. Right? That's how we can describe them. They are on the same side. One's inside, one's outside. And they're non-adjacent angles. That's how we describe them. Okay? Alright, let's talk about 23 then. Let's talk about 2 and 3. Let's talk about you and what? Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about 2 and 3. What? Alright, so what's 23? 23 says 4 and 5. Angle 4 and angle 5. So it's talking about these guys right here. Okay? It's talking about those guys. I'm going to show you why I just did that in a minute. 4 and 5. Are they both inside? There's one outside, one inside? Or are they both outside? Are they both exterior? Are they both interior? Or is one interior and one exterior? What are they?
They're both interior.
They're both interior. They're both in the red. Right? Remember, the red. Okay? The brown. Okay? They're both inside this red. So they're both interior. Do they alternate around a transversal? Or are they on the same side?
They're on opposite sides.
Are they on the same side or are they alternating? Alternating. Okay? So they are alternating, right? So these are alternating interior angles, right? Right? Okay? Now, because these are parallel, we should know that these are congruent. These are congruent. The great thing about these are congruent. 2 and 5, or sorry, 2 and 3 are congruent. Right? But 2 and 4 are not congruent. Are they? They're not even part of each other. They're part of two totally different systems. You see how that is? One's part of this transversal and the other one's part of this transversal. They don't have anything to do with each other. Okay? 4 and 2 and 5 and 3 have nothing to do with each other. Okay? However, if I were to look at this side, we would know that that was congruent to 2, right? We would also know that this was congruent to 3, right? Alright? Alright, let's talk about some more. What about 24? Is that still recording? Yeah? 24. What does 24 say? 2 and 4. Angle 2 and angle 4. Alright, so now we're talking about this guy and this guy. Oh, well, what did we just say about that?
Talking about one what?
2 and 4. Now, we know, right, that 2 and 4 alternate around this transversal. So they can be called alternate exterior angles. But what they cannot be is they cannot be congruent. Because these lines that transversal is cutting, these lines are not parallel. Does that make sense? So they are, even though they are alternate exterior, right? These are exterior on the outside of these guys, right? They're alternate exterior angles. They're not congruent alternate exterior angles. Because we're not talking about angles that are made up from parallel lines. So what am I going to be having on the test? I'll have a couple of these non-parallel ones. Mostly parallel. Parallel, parallel, parallel. Corresponding. Right? Alternate exterior. Same side adjacent. I mean, we're going to be doing tons of this stuff. You're going to be adding them to get to be 180. Or you'll be setting both sides equal to each other. Okay? Last one, 25. Give me another color. 25. What is 25 asking? 25 wants to know 1 and 2. 1 and angle 2. Again, think about this. There's two lines, right? Here's a line and here's a line. and it's cut by a transversal. Always use your colors. Okay? 2 and 1, are they inside, outside, or one of each?
They're both exterior.
Think. This is what's happening. So we'll redraw it. We're going to redraw it. Here's 1 and here's 2. These 2 lines, is this inside? And that means this is exterior, right? Are these both inside?
Yeah.
Are they on the same side of the transversal, or do they alternate? They're on the same side, right? So what do we call that? They're both interior, and they're on the same side. So they are same side interior. Okay? So it helps if you rewrite the question away from the question. Draw the new picture so you can see the 2 lines and the transversal. Okay? Now, could I have looked at this as like this? What if this were the 2 lines and this were the transversal? And you had 1 and 2. Well, it wouldn't make any sense, right? Because it would be way up here, away from the transversal. It has nothing to do with your transversal. It's not on the other side of the transversal or nothing. Does that make sense? That's why this one, well, I don't know what they are. They're not anything. And the same way, if I were to draw it like this, where the red line was the one coming down. If the red line were the one coming down, right? And these were the other 2 lines, but you still had 1 and 2. 2 is so far away from the transversal that it has nothing to do with it. They need to be along the transversal. If they're not along the transversal, then I can't name them. Does that make sense? I'm not going to name them if they're away from the transversal. Okay? So, this is the only one that we could actually name. I can't name this because 1 and 2 have nothing to do with the transversal together. But together they're part of the transversal here, and in this case they're both interior and they're same side interior. In this case, one's interior and the other one's, I don't know, because we're looking at these guys. Okay? Because this is what we're talking about. This circle and this circle. When we're talking about transversals, we're talking about where the transversal meets. Where the transversal meets. Those are the angles that we can talk about. Does that make sense? If they're not in that circle, we can't talk about them. If they're not both in that circle, I can't name them. If they're not both in that circle, I can't name them. Does that make sense? So this is the only one I can name. And that was the same way with this 24. With 24, I had to look at 2 and 4, right? So I had to look at this guy. Okay? And I had to look at 2, and I had to look at 4, right? So I had to look at what touches 2 and 4. This. And that becomes their transversal. So now they become part of the circle. You see what I'm saying? And so now I can say, okay, with respect to the transversal, are they inside or are they outside? Oh, they're outside. They're both outside. Right? They're both outside and they alternate. So they're alternate exterior angles. Does that make more sense? Where are we with that? Fingers, let's see, thumbs.
How do you know which line is the transversal?
The line that touches the angles you're talking about.
All the lines seem to be touching each line.
Yes, but do all the lines touch both angles? The two angles in which you are talking about have to be touched by the transversal in order to be named. Okay? So, in this first one, 2 and 3, let's look at 2 and 3. We have this line and this line, right? And we don't know what 2 and 3 are, right? We don't know what the transversal is, except we know that the transversal touches both angles. So which one of these lines touch both angles? This one, or this one?
The line that's going.
This one, right? So that becomes our transversal. And once that's our transversal, we can name it. Corresponding. Because one's inside, one's outside. So the transversal changes from one problem to the next. Does that make sense? The transversal is only a line that crosses two other lines. And like you're seeing here, well, all of these are lines that cross two other lines, right? So the transversal can be labeled as any one of these. But the only way we can name it is if the transversal touches both angles. If the transversal doesn't touch both angles, we cannot name it. Does that make sense? So there's only one line that touches 2 and 4 here, right?
But aren't there other angles, like at the top of the...
Oh yeah, there's a ton. But they're only asking us about these two. So then we want to talk about those two. Does that make sense? And when they ask us about these two, we want to just talk about those two. And then when they ask us about these two, we want to talk about those two. Is that better? Good. Questions? Those are great questions. These questions make the video better. If you're not asking these questions, it's hard to make the video better. Question?
I'm confused with the exterior and interior, like, changes.
Yes, the exterior and the interior changes, right? Because what's interior and exterior here is not necessarily the same over here, right? You have to remember, the interior is always the inside of the two lines that aren't the transversal. So, interior, exterior. Guys, settle down. These are great questions. And if you don't understand, tomorrow, because we will be testing Wednesday. Okay? With this one, the interior is inside these two lines. This is the interior. And even though they cross here, this still is the interior. The exterior is outside of those two black lines.
So the exterior is, so the two black ones make up the interior, but if it's the red and the black, it's exterior?
In my case, yeah. Because I always change the color. Right? So she's asking, is it always red and black? It is for me because that's the colors I'm choosing today. Right? But you could easily say, for this 1 and 2, if you have these, this is 1 and this is 2, right? Which one of these lines touch both 1 and 2? This one, or this one? The first one, second one, or third one? First one. So that becomes your transversal. That means that inside the other two lines is your interior. And outside those other two lines is your exterior. Notice how that's not black and red anymore. It's orange and blue. Does that help? Good stuff.